So we've already covered the settlement of Virginia. So in this section, we're going to briefly discuss the rest of the southern colonies and also the middle colonies. So let's start with the type of colonies. There were three types of colonies in the English settlement of America. The first was proprietary. This was a colony founded by private individuals who were given the power to make and execute laws. The second was a royal colony under direct control of the King of England, who would then appoint a governor to rule the colony. And there was also self-governing or charter colonies, in which the king grants a charter to a joint stock company and the company develops government independent of the crown. Take a moment and think about what type of colony Virginia was. How was it founded? If you said self-governing, you are correct. Though after the failure of Jamestown, Virginia did become a royal colony. So let's start with Maryland. Maryland was founded as a Catholic experiment. You should be familiar with the religious strife that was happening over in England. And people of the Catholic faith still faced persecution. So, Catholic leaders decided to settle what was supposed to be an all-Catholic colony. This became Virginia. So in 1632, King Charles granted a charter to Lord Baltimore, also known as Cecilius Calvert, a wealthy Catholic aristocrat, and Maryland became a proprietary colony under the control of Lord Baltimore. So it was officially founded in 1634 and named after the Catholic Queen Mary. The economy of Maryland was based on shipbuilding, ironworks, and also agriculture, tobacco, corn, wheat, rice, and indigo. Even though it was founded as a Catholic colony, many Protestants began to settle in Maryland, and this caused issues between settlers of different faiths. So the Maryland Act of Toleration was passed that provided religious toleration to all Christians. So this was one of the first laws mandating religious tolerance in the colonies as a way to keep Catholics from being persecuted. Catholics were eventually run out of the government, and Protestants did take control. The Maryland Act of Toleration is important because it was one of the first. Also, the name Act of Toleration is kind of humorous because it was tolerant of Christians, but anyone who did not accept the divinity of Jesus Christ, so people of Jewish faith or atheists, they could be sentenced to the death penalty. So it was tolerant of Christians, not of anybody else. Let's talk about the Carolinas. So, North and South Carolina were originally founded as one entire colony in the unsettled lands between Virginia and Spanish Florida. It began as a proprietary colony. Land was given to the Lord Proprietors who ruled the Carolinas, but eventually it became a royal colony. The Carolinas, especially South Carolina, flourished by developing close economic ties with the West Indies and bringing over their systems of slavery as the backbone of the economy. So the Carolinas' economy was focused on agriculture. Rice was popular as well as tobacco, and African slaves were hired to work on these plantations throughout the South. They were seen as the best option for labor because they were resistant to malaria, a disease that killed a lot of the English settlers, and also were familiar with how to plant and work on these plantations. Uh, the region separated in the early 1700s uh, because the people who settled in the Carolinas were very distinctly different groups, and we'll look at those differences in a second. So the settlers to North Carolina tended to be strong-willed and independent-minded. They developed a strong resistance to authority. North Carolina lacked good ports, so the population was sparse. Most of the people in the Carolinas settled in the southern part. Um, North Carolina grew tobacco and also used pine tar for commercial goods. That's how we got the name Tar Heels. The major cities of North Carolina were located in the east: New Bern, which was the first capital, also Bath, um, and the regions like where we live now in the middle and the mountains were very sparsely populated. Though slavery did exist in North Carolina, most of the settlers there were small independent farmers. So slavery was not as important in North Carolina as it was in South Carolina. In South Carolina, the people were more aristocratic and wealthier. There were a lot of large plantation owners. They had an important port, Charlestown, which eventually became Charleston. They farmed sugarcane, tobacco, rice, and indigo, and as I said, relied heavily on slave labor coming from the West Indies. Georgia was a special colony. It was originally intended as a type of utopian society. It was the last English colony to be established in 1733, just 3 decades before calls for independence began. It was intended to be a buffer zone between the British colonies, especially South Carolina, which was becoming very wealthy with cash crops, and Florida, which was owned then by the Spanish. So we wanted to protect our English settlers from hostile Spanish settlers. So Georgia was founded by a man named James Oglethorpe. And it was established first as a colony for debtors, people who were being held in prison in England for going into debt. They could go and settle in Georgia for a new start, be given 50 acres of land, which they couldn't sell. They had to grow it and make their living that way. So James Oglethorpe was a humanitarian. He wanted to improve people's lives. So Georgia earned its charter in 1732 from King George II, who the colony was named after. It began as a proprietary colony under James Oglethorpe, but eventually became a royal colony as well. The major industry in Georgia was agriculture. Rice, indigo, and sugar were all popular. All Christians, except for Catholics, enjoyed religious toleration throughout Georgia. And whenever Georgia was first established as this penal colony for prisoners, slavery and alcohol were both banned. Those will eventually be permitted once the original charter is provoked, but those two things were not allowed at first. So let's talk about the middle colonies. We'll start with Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania was founded by a man named William Penn. His father had loaned a lot of money to the English crown, so to pay off his debts, William Penn received a large tract of land in the New World, which became Pennsylvania, which means Penn's Woods. So the main city in Pennsylvania is obviously Philadelphia, which became the most important city in the founding of the United States. And Pennsylvania was a proprietary colony under William Penn, and it remained a proprietary colony until the American Revolution. Pennsylvania was largely settled by Quakers. William Penn was a Quaker. Quakers had some radical beliefs, and they were persecuted over in England. So Pennsylvania was established as a safe haven for Quakers. Quakers believed in the equality of everyone, men and women. Later they became ardent opposers to slavery, though not necessarily at first. There was slavery in Pennsylvania at the beginning. Quakers were known for being nonviolent, so they would refuse to pay taxes if they thought that those taxes would fund a war. Their church beliefs, they believed in no hierarchy of the church. Everyone was just as important as the other. They held simple town meetings, which everyone got a chance to speak during. Pennsylvania was full of farmland, which enticed a lot of settlers from different places, especially the Germans, loved the vast farmland of Pennsylvania. Obviously, you've probably heard of the Amish, who still live in Pennsylvania today. The economy of Pennsylvania was based on exports of agricultural products. Pennsylvania was a huge port, and also the manufacture of iron products. Delaware was also a proprietary colony founded in 1664. It was originally a colony of Swedes and Dutch, and then later was seized by England. Delaware was given to William Penn so he would have access to the Delaware River in order to be able to export goods. The economy was based on the manufacture of iron products and exports to England. And there was also religious freedom for Protestant, Catholic, and Jewish groups within Delaware, a very religiously tolerant area. New York was originally explored and settled by the Dutch in 1609. They allowed all religions and nationalities. It was originally named New Amsterdam, and there was a largely diverse population there. In 1674, the English will fight for the land and seize it, and the Dutch are forced to give that land to England. So before the English officially get New Amsterdam, King Charles II offered the land to his brother, the Duke of York, and that's how it became New York after being New Amsterdam. New York was a royal colony, and its economy was based on exporting goods from New York City, also agriculture, especially in upstate New York. Wheat was grown, and manufacturing iron products. So New York was another colony that began as a proprietary colony and then eventually became a royal colony. New Jersey was also settled by the Dutch and the Swedes. Also, a lot of Quakers settled in New Jersey as well. In 1664, New Jersey was surrendered to the English and given its name, named after a location in England. Lord Berkeley was the proprietor of New Jersey. He was given the power to govern. So New Jersey also began as a proprietary colony and eventually became a royal colony. The major cities in New Jersey were Trenton and Princeton, and the economy was the same as New York. So those are the rest of our southern and middle colonies.